Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Latina Success Podcast. Today, I have two amazing ladies with me, Jimena from Guadalajara, and we have a very, very special guest, Cynthia. Cynthia has been in the customer success and support for too many years and recently joined in Orbit, a company that I really like and has been working in the robotics industry. And well, today Cynthia is going to tell about what it takes to scale a customer success team. And well, the floor is for you, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So,
Really nice to see you.
yes. I would like if you can start telling us about you, who you are, your experience, and then we can start diving a little more into the topic.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Cynthia Bell. I have been doing customer service for a very long time. I started out in Michigan, just doing customer service for AAA, doing emergency road service and membership. I found myself in a team lead position and then kind of went through the Michigan shutdown. All the GM plants shut down and unemployment was very, very relevant to everybody's lives. And so I moved to Arizona, and that's where I got into technical support. I took my first technical support job just as somebody who answers the phones for hotels and troubleshoot their property management systems that does reservations and everything. I got promoted to a trainer 6 months after that, which was kind of, I don't know, an accident. I never saw myself as a technical person at the time, but apparently I was good enough at it to train people. From there, I got my first supervisor job at another company who was like, well, if you can train people, you can manage people. And I quickly found out that those are two very different things. One, you're teaching them and getting them right out the door and sending them off to their managers, and the other is being accountable for people and learning what makes them tick and how to navigate both their lives and their professional careers. And that's kind of where I both found that I disliked it, but also loved it because it was very much a challenge and hard on somebody who's never done it before. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't do any of that at that time. So it was very, very much a struggle for me, but one that I wanted to accomplish. From there, I went on to other management positions after that, kind of just stumbling upwards, so to speak, until I was told that if I wanted to continue to advance, that I'd have to go to school. Up until that time, I had no college education, but I'd been in management for years at that point. So I worked while I went to school on my off time and got my bachelor's degree in organizational management, something I'd been already doing. So the schooling went pretty easily for me. And then I continued my career, moving up the chain through management in different tech companies until 2018 when I ended up in robotics, which was very, very fortunate for me. I never saw myself in robotics. In all honesty, I didn't even remember applying for the job that I had applied for at the time. So when they called and said, hey, this is a robotics industry position, we need somebody to build the first ever robot operations center, I went, I couldn't have applied for that. There's no way I did that. But I took the job, and it was probably the best experience I've ever had. Unfortunately, the company didn't make it out of COVID, but I learned so much about how building a robot operations center was the same as building like a help desk or a customer service desk. You use a lot of the same metrics, figure out what your growth and forecasting is, how to staff for it, the expertise that you need to hire in for it, when to do all of those things. We, took it from a very small help desk to a very large one, maxing out at about 90 people in about a year and a half. So it was a lot of process improvement and change and implementation, and then just lather, rinse, repeat. And it was probably the best experience I've ever had. And that's what kind of launched me to where I am today. I've been at a couple other companies, the most recent one being in Orbit, which is robot software platform. So I kind of made a name for myself in this little niche of the world, which has been really, really cool. It's not any place I ever thought I'd end up, but here I am, and I'm happy to be doing it. It's been amazing, to say the least.
Great, Cynthia. I was well, after everything that you've done to managing people and then to kind of go manage robots. So, what are the main things that in robotics, managing human interaction? We know that technology has been advancing and it's been a great discovery, but most people doesn't know how to speak, doesn't know how to express what they want, right? So we are misinterpreting a message from people asking something but not what they really want, so the robot doesn't know how to distinguish that. We humans tend to kind of like suppose or kind of interpret, have intuition kind of in a way, especially mothers. They go faster than the rest of humans, right? So how was it in your managing people and now managing robots? How has that experience enriched you in a professional and kind of in a vocabulary level?
Sure. So to me, they go hand in hand, right? There's not a robot out there that doesn't take human interaction to navigate. So even in the best situations where it looks like the robot is completely autonomous and doing what it's supposed to do, at some level, there's a human back there making sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do so that we can report how to make the improvements or figure out where it's having the most issues. So when it comes to navigating the robots and figuring out what the people are actually asking the robot to do, it really comes down to the people gathering that information. So if a customer is saying, I want to keep product on the shelf, then the problem statement is they run out of inventory and they want to know what to restock and when. And I use this example because it was the first one that we were trying to solve at Bossa Nova back in 2018 when I came on. And all of the data around that was very manually captured. We had the robot that took the pictures of the shelves to determine whether or not there was anything missing or low in stock. But then you had people manually annotating those pictures to circle like what needed to be done and then feeding them to the customer. So that was a very manual process. How do you get rid of that? Well, you have to capture data at different levels. So my team were the ones that were capturing where the robots got stuck and fixing those things in real time, and then feeding that information over to the engineer saying, hey, these little lips on the floor, the robot keeps getting stuck there, or there's a post in this aisle at this store. How do we manage to get around that rather than having to interfere with it all the time? So the problem of how do I keep things on the shelf was broken down into all of these other little problems of how do we capture the data around what needs to be kept on the shelves. And then how do we automate capturing that data? So it's this whole step process of first you have to identify what the problems are. Then you have to get the data to prove what the problems are. Then you have to figure out how to solve those problems. Then you have to figure out how to make it so that those problems are solved consistently all of the time without a human. And then there's a new problem. Then they say, well, now we want the robot to do this. And you start all over again. So in my experience, both of them go hand in hand. It's not a matter of how do you do the robot side of things after doing the people side of things. It's always the people side of things until the robot can do that on its own.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, and now, Cynthia, I think going back to our topic, right, and what it takes to have a scaling team, right? Like, how can you scale, you know? And I'm assuming you have a start from zero, like this invitation when you have to start joining, right, to do this Center for Operations. How did you start, right? And I'm assuming this is the challenge of many people who probably start the position for the first time in a startup, that they say you are going to be our head of customer success, you are going to start, you know, developing the strategy and the foundation of the team. what it takes that, right? What is the challenge and how you start doing that?
So I think the biggest challenge is trying to understand what it takes to support the product, what the initial lift is. That's really hard to do from a ground level when you don't have really a large customer base of data to go off of. You know, if you join an established company, you have all of that information. You can dive into data and go, all right, so this is the forecasted scale. This is what we expect the support tickets to drive. These are the KPIs we're trying to reach. When you don't have all of that to start, you don't even know where to start. So you're going, well, I think my robot should do X, Y, and Z successfully X% of the time. And then you start doing it and find out that that's never true. So you run the risk of, do I overstaff in the beginning and hope that we catch up? Or do we understaffed and potentially overload our people? And it's a fine line because you're trying to make sure that you, especially in startup world, overstaffing can be detrimental. Like you don't want to make that mistake because that's money going out without any return on it. So normally the solution is to understaff it and then try to catch up to all of the problems. I think that that's the hardest challenge, is getting that initial data set, because you have employees that are overworked, but trying to do well. So they might be overcompensating, and that becomes a hard challenge to baseline. If you have somebody doing the work of 3 people, you think you can just hire 1 more person when really you need, 6 more people. So it's the starting up of the startup to get it to that first hurdle of data is probably the most challenging portion. After that, you figure out what data points matter to fix those challenges that we were talking about earlier. What is the thing that the customer is trying to solve, and capturing all the data around those, and then just tracking it. Half of what I do, more than half of what I do, is just look at the data over and over and over again. Every morning I would go in, I would check the robot data from the day before, see what worked, see what didn't, try to make any adjustments, get it to engineering, and start from scratch. Because the data is what's gonna drive everything, from hiring to not hiring to product improvement, to tell you if a software update went through right, to tell you if something blew up, and now we're scrambling to do anything with it. But you can't account for any of that when you're first starting the support and success part of things. You just don't know what you don't know, and that's challenging.
Yeah. So now, I don't know if you can help us to walk us through your process, right? Like how, when somebody say, Cynthia, you are in charge of the team, right? I know you already talk about data and you already talk about like, oh, you need to do this. But let's say these are your first 30 days hired, as a new head of customer, or a VP included. What are your steps? How would you start that?
So the first thing I've done every place is, because I always say, like, I'm not technical, I am people, right? So I don't know the product, I don't know coding, I don't know robots, I've never run a robot in my life. But I lean heavily on my people. So going off of the first time I ever had to do this at Bossa Nova, I went in, had no clue anything about robots. But I had a very small group of people who had been there since the inception of the company, and I leaned on them heavily. Tell me what they do. Tell me when they run. Tell me what your challenges are. Where do you keep the data that you're tracking? I get all of that information, and then I figure out how to ingest it and understand it the best I can. From there, I've also been very blessed in my career to make a lot of good connections and network well. So a couple of the people that have worked with me at several locations, several jobs throughout my career, I just brought them with me and said, all right, you know how I work. What my expectations are. I can't help you do this job. You're going to have to help build this for me and tell me what you need. So having reliable people that can tell me what they're actually challenged with so that I can go get those things fixed is really, really helpful. So I lean on my people a lot to tell me what's broken, what would make their lives easier. and then figuring out who else in the company is able to go fix those, normally the engineering departments or whatever. Product, if I needed something created, to go to engineering. So you figure out who you can rely on and then who to get that information to. From there, I'm able to kind of give a guesstimate on forecasting. So if I know a robot is going to run and it takes 3 hours from start to finish, if it doesn't need any intervention, but every robot tends to need intervention at least X number of times and it takes 5 minutes a pop, I can make those guesstimates about how long it's going to take a robot to run, how long it takes the battery to charge after that to be able to go on the next run, all of those things. So I'll start to put all of that data together. So I have it to lean on and then track it to see if it changes over time. That gives me my ability to scale. Like, okay, if you wanted to add another 20 robots to the fleet tomorrow, and I know every robot takes 4 hours to run, and you want to run it 3 times a day, then this is the amount of time I need between things, and that means I need X number of people to be able to address those problems because I can't work people for 24 hours a day. So I'm able to give those projections, and then the cost that goes with it. Well, if you want this many people, this is what it's going to cost us to run that. This is the amount of space that we need. This is the amount of computers and equipment that we need. And that's kind of, you just keep doing that over and over again. Every time something improves, that means that the touch to the robots decreases, which means the amount of people that I need decreases. But if you want to add 150 robots, it doesn't decrease. So it's a lot of math. Which I love. I love diving into data and being able to show people through data what I need and why, versus just having like, I think I need 20 people and then going, prove it. So that's kind of my process. It's the same thing over and over again. And every time a new change comes in, the whole thing starts over. So in the beginning, if you're running a robot and you know that the person has to hit the start button, and they have to do that for 300 robots. You have to have enough people to hit a start button 300 times. And that's a lot of button pushes. But, you know, over the course of time, they say, all right, now the robots don't need you to hit the start button. They'll go automatically. But now your data's changed. So you have to relook at it every single time a robot improvement happens to be able to say, all right, now we have this extra capacity. So in the meantime, all of those people, people who say robots take jobs, I strongly disagree. I think they make so many jobs. All of my team is a great example of that. Every single time the robot got better improved, we didn't have to get rid of any of them. We just gave them more to do because now there's other stuff to do with the robots. There's more data to be gathered. There's more points to look at. There's just so much going on. So in the meantime of trying to say, this is what my staffing is, I'm also making process for them to follow to be able to do more on the back end. So it's just like you're recycling the people to learn more, which is awesome too. That's my second favorite part is being able to teach people and advance their careers and all of that fun stuff.
They continue to grow, right? I am amazed of what you're saying because I think there's a common misconception, or at least where the people I kind of work with tend to say that robots will end everyone's work. And what you're saying is exactly the opposite, because as humans, we have the ability to continue learning, to continue solving any other problem. We now have time for that because there's a robot that has solved an amount of things or an amount or percentage of problems. But there is a common misconception in many startups and people that want to replace people with robots. And what you're saying is that actually it's not going to be replaced because there are so many things we are part of. We are learning so many ideas, options, problems that are resurfacing. So you cannot depend your whole success in a robot, because there are people who needs to control them. There are people who needs to solve the problems that perhaps the robot hasn't solved yet, right?
Yes, exactly.
I will add, because I can talk about this topic for many years, probably Cynthia too. Uh, one of the things I have seen in robotics, and that's why I love robotics, is because it's bringing the opportunity to do a different job, right? Before we were having people, and I can see it here. I live in a town where before it was a mining town, and the other day I had a tour in one of the mines. And it was interesting. Like I was amazed. Like before they were going into the mines with all this risk in a dark place, right? People was dying sometimes there and they didn't know because it was dark, right? And as far as they start adopting technology, of course, that people, those miners were removed and people was upset at the beginning, right? It's the only thing I know how to do. But then later they realized that they were put into another position, right? That they were not going down, they were operating the machine, so they were doing things in the surface that they didn't have to risk their lives. Now, I don't think there are positions still, well, probably in the construction, but anyways, I see that now robotics is taking over those risky jobs or those repetitive tasks that no people was able, to keep doing it because new generations wants to learn, wants to do something else. So now we are creating jobs that instead of being taking, grabbing the apples from the trees, now we have a robot that can do that. But then you can be the technical operator, or you can be the mechanical engineer who is building it, or you can be somebody who is fixing the robot. But now you are now in the field speaking of the apples. So robotics, I think, is bringing, a lot of new opportunities that they were not there before. And well, again, I can talk about this topic, and it's not about me. I think another important question, Cynthia, here, and I would love to hear from you, is you and I know that this industry is more male dominated than other industries for many reasons. What it takes to be, in a male dominated industry, building a team, building an operation center, scaling a team, right? Like I imagine all these arguments, like you say, yes, you have to bring data, but also I think probably bring another challenges to be woman in this industry.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, and it's not just robotics. I've been in tech since, technical support was male dominated when I first started in it too. I think I was one of 3 women when I started in my first tech support job, and it was a 100-person desk. So it was just us 3, and then 97 guys plus all the trainers and supervisors were male too. And it's hard, but in ways that I didn't realize at the time, because when you're in it, you don't realize it, right? You're just in the moment, and things that were normal then, I look back on and go, that probably wasn't normal. And I think those experiences in the beginning when I was in my early 20s really helped me when I made it into this part of things. You develop a thick skin. There's, especially in startups, not exclusive to robotics, but in general, robotics can bring a lot of emotion. People want it to do well. A lot of people are in positions that they've never been in before because they helped build this company, and now they're the head of this or the head of that or the VP or the CEO, and all these positions that they didn't really work their way into as much as they took them because they were the person who helped build this business. And I think a lot of the things that you gain with experience get missed along the way in startups. Yeah. So the emotions that can happen in these settings that don't necessarily happen in like corporate boardrooms and stuff, like when you're in like huge meeting with a ton of people in suit and ties, like the things that be said in there just don't happen. And when you're the woman in the room trying to keep the peace, it can be hard. And you're trying to navigate around what the actual problem is versus everybody fighting with each other and the best way to solve it. I think that's the biggest challenge, is like, how do I move the needle when it's just everybody trying to play tug of war with what they want to do? That's startup, right? Like everybody wants to be the hero in the startup industry, and it's a lot. but for me personally, like I said, I've been very lucky to have some good employees that have turned into peers, that have turned into leaders in the companies that they're at now. And having them with me helped me be a better manager, right? So it's kind of like, you know, they had my back. Like, hey, we know you're our manager. We'll follow you. We're going to do whatever you tell us to do because we know you have our best interest in mind. And they kind of help give me the voice. And maybe it has to do with them being all male mostly. But, you know, when you have enough of them talking behind you and validating you to the people who you're trying to say you need changes from, it helps a lot. So I say that I mean, I don't know how to put it into words. It's been both frustrating and exhausting and emotional at times. You feel like you have to set boundaries that you shouldn't have to set a lot of the times with your male counterparts. But if I had to give advice, it's, you know, do it, because if you don't, you'll get walked all over. And the worst thing that happens when you set those boundaries is they might resent you, but they know where not to step anymore. And that helps you later on, because that just becomes the norm over time. Is like, well, I know that I have to act this way. I know that when Cynthia says she needs something, she needs it. You know, you earn respect through just time and perseverance.
Yep. Great
Yeah.
advice.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's one of the challenges, as you pointed out, and I've been watching many enterprises and many even universities that I've been working in, that most people don't, when they get into a job position, because they have evolved, nobody's prepared to take that job position. There is no there's no mentoring, there's no teachers of how things work, and less, sadly, less and less people read. So you can find that information in a book, but because we have that idea of, oh, I can evolve in my position within the company, their fear of failing, it's worse. So they tend to control more. Men and women. This is not something of gender or anything, but it's kind of the imposter syndrome that they tend to have because of that pressure of doing it okay, but they never consider asking for help or doing something. So they rely even on technology to make decisions to build their own prestige and their own fame within the company. And I think what you say is morally frustrating, even because these people that are good-hearted, they know they don't have the ability. They don't have the attitudes, the correct focus and the way to approach things. Being a startup, it's researching and experimenting. But at one point, the people get onto other job positions and they forget that idea of researching, still going on with that. What do I want? What is my focus, mission, vision, values of this job position? Not the enterprise. The enterprise, it's already the position, but this job position that I have, they forget they are starting up that position. So I think it's heavier in the social pressure within the startup or within the company to have those things. And it's terrible to have that idea where we need to have some boundaries that are supposed to be common sense, but it's not, because people are scared of losing their job just because they're failing. And I think a startup, what is wonderful about them is you are able to fail. That is why it is a startup. A company of years, perhaps not, but the startup, and we tend to fail in that philosophy.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
Another part of the scaling process too is having the right people in the right place, right? And I don't think that startups are very good at reassessing who's in the positions at the right times. Because I know me personally, I probably would not have been able to run a robot operations center of 90 people in my first management position. But there's a lot of people who are put in those situations, right? They started out small and then all of a sudden it jumped in scale, and those people may not be the right person to lead it at that level. That doesn't mean that they, have to be gone. Maybe they get repurposed to something else that they're really good at and their strengths. But nobody really reassesses those things on who should be in those key positions of leadership as the company grows to get it to the next level. I think that that's equally as important as putting the right people in the right seats during the time and growing the business. You have to have the right people who know how to lead the business.
I totally agree with you, Cynthia. Like Jimena was saying, sometimes when you're a startup, you have to learn that there are many things that are going to fail, right? And you need different people at different stages. When you are building up, you need somebody who is able to take risk and to learn to do experiments, because I have seen sometimes in the company that, oh, is this person that has been building in this company and that, and they have all this experience, and they bring it because the experience, but in reality, once they are in a startup, they don't know how to start, right?
Yeah.
They don't know how to fail. And then their experience is not valuable at that time. And then the opposite, right? Somebody who start with the startup and grow with it, suddenly being in a position that, oh, I need to scale and have 100 people under me. They don't know how to do it because they have never had it. And I feel it's one of the biggest failures also in companies, in the startups, to understand where is the right time to have these people, right? And doesn't mean like you say, oh, now we're gonna fire you. No, you are still valuable because you have probably the knowledge from the beginning, right? And probably the person feels that they deserve this other position, but it's also helping them to understand what are the goals and challenges in order to have that position, because it's not like you just earn it because of time, but also you need the help, right? And I remember this happened to me at one point in my career, right? That we grow the company and we needed more guidance, more leadership that I wasn't prepared for at that time. And the CEO say, okay, I'm going to bring this other person. And I feel offended, to be honest, right? Because it was my work.
Yeah.
I did it, right? But then it took me a while to learn. And I have to admit that the person that was bringing it to me, she was awesome. And she helped me to understand that she was there to help me to be able to navigate this monster that we built, right? She was able to mentor me. She was able to be there for me. And at that point, I have to say, okay, now I'm ready to take over. But I wasn't ready because I didn't have the experience that this other person had. But I feel offended, and I understand why, right? Because it was me who was sweating and crying, but I wasn't ready to have all big monster under me. And now I understand that. But a lot of people doesn't. And then it's when, like you say, all these emotions came.
There's a lot of ego that happens with it. I mean, and I'm no exception to that. When I was leading that first robot operations center, and it grew to as big as I got it to, and they brought in somebody. So I reported to the VP, and they brought somebody in for me to report to in between me and the VP at a certain point. And I was very offended that I wasn't given that spot. I thought I had worked very hard and that I deserved it. But there was a lot more strategy involved at that level that if I would have just taken that on in addition to what I was doing, I probably would have failed. And in the beginning, me and my boss, who we're still friends now, I worked with him in Orbit. We had a lot of friction because I had that resentment in the beginning. And probably a little bit on his side trying to come in and take control, right? And so like those two things just butt heads, because I'm hurt and he's trying to come in and do something and make a name for himself, and those things just did not jive. And it took some time, but I think that he recognized that when it came to the support side of things, I had that, and he was able to go focus on the strategy side of things with some other departments, which would help benefit our team in ways that I wasn't able to. So, putting your ego aside has a lot of benefit to it if you allow it to, which is what I took away from that situation. And it helped me in my next jobs after that. So I think that's you can learn from your own mistakes is the takeaway there. Make sure that you are the right person for it and not just the person that should have it because of your tenure, because of what you've done. Like, what are the job requirements? Are you the right person for it? Can you learn from somebody else? Like, those things matter.
Absolutely. Well, Cynthia, we are, ending this conversation that I think we shall have another part. There are a lot of topics we can talk about it. But I don't know, before we leave, I don't know if anything you want to add or give advice to our audience. Jimena, if you want to add also something, that would be cool.
I don't have anything to add. It's been wonderful meeting you guys. If you guys want to do more in the future, I look forward to it. I love chatting about this stuff, and it's nice to meet some other ladies in the field who have interests as I do. So it's been great.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Jimena, anything you would like to add?
Well, I take so much from this conversation. It was really lovely, and I think this gives us for a next meeting, because the ego and the emotions that are played in the working environment also affects the way we see technology. And I think today was really pleasant because technology is our ally, it's our friend. It's not something that comes to harm us. I think that's the emotion that we are trying to understand with people that are not really keen on technology. And I think, Cynthia, you're doing a great job. You are so much more human than many other humanists that I know. Being a philosopher, I know about that, and I think that's amazing to consider all the possibilities of the human range of emotions, abilities, teamwork, and how that good and efficient working environment helps the robots build our lives and make it easier. So I really appreciate and it has been great knowing you.
Thank you so much again, Cynthia. So happy, to share this floor with you, another woman in robotics. Awesome. And well, the best of luck, and well, see you next time.
All right. Sounds great. Have a great day, guys.
You too.